Radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan. The voice of the Blue Eagle, kami di mapipigil sa pagbabalitang tumpak at tama. Buhay atin sa labas ng eskwela, ating ibigpida lahat ng eskwela. Radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, 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 Katipunan, radyo, radyo, Katipunan, radyo, Katipunan. Kawal ni Ignacio, Katipunero sugo, todo sa kayod, tunong at tulong. Impart the Blue Eagle, galing hiding at tigil.
Alright, magandang umaga. Welcome to Kuwentuhang Bayan, the radio program of the Simbahang Lingkod ng Bayan, the socio-political apostolate of the Society of Jesus in the Philippines. Ayan, ito po ulit si Manuel, absent for a whole month. Tama ba? So 3-4 weeks ako wala, but we're back and tuloy-tuloy pa rin ang Kuwentuhang Bayan today. No? So yung pag-uusapan natin sa araw na ito, medyo controversial, medyo mainit na topic. We'll be talking about the SOGIE bill, and I have with me two young students, two very brave students who really have committed their time, committed their energy, and I think a significant part of their college life to the advocacy of the SOGIE bill. Pero before we get to meet them, muli yung Kuwentuhang Bayan, this is the radio program of the Society of Jesus, and part of our mission as an organization really is building towards a hope-filled future, towards a future that is just and fair. And kasama ang usapin tungkol sa LGBT movement sa usapan ito. No? So ito yung magiging konteksto ng umaga natin. And for those who are listening, if you have comments, if you have insights, if you have questions, or kung may hindi kayo naiintindihan tungkol sa SOGIE, please leave them in the comments, and we'll try to get to them within the hour. The two people we have here today are new faces dito sa Radyo Katipunan. First time ko rin sila mahilala today, and I'll let them have some time to introduce themselves. So please guys, welcome to the show, and pakilala naman kayo sa ating mga tagapakinig.
Thank you. My name is Jake Consing. I'm the Director of Education and Research at the Philippine Anti-Discrimination Alliance of Youth Leaders. And I'm also a member of the Sanggunian. I'm the Deputy for Social Political Response under the Office of the Vice President.
Hi guys, I'm Digo Bengzon. I'm the Director of Internals of the organization also Jake mentioned called PANTAY. And then I'm also the head of SOCPOL of the Commission on Gender Equality of the Sanggunian.
Alright, so you guys, kanina nag-uusap kami, and these guys really are sophomores, tama ba?
Yeah.
Yes.
How did you get involved into something like this? Something that is a nationwide bill, something that is an issue that admittedly is addressing long-standing concerns, very early dito sa inyong siguro college life. Paano kayo nasama sa kilusan na to?
You can go first.
Well, being a part of the LGBTQ plus community, you're really exposed to a lot of these things very early on once you develop your own identity and develop your identity within this part of the community. I remember during the summer na nga before college, I would I'd immerse myself really within the Manila LGBTQ plus community. So you'd see rallies, you'd see people really fighting for their rights. So early on, you as a part of the community, you really see that side of the fight that we're really fighting for.
Well, for me, it started in high school because I was a bisexual kid in a very conservative all-boys school called... Actually, I won't name drop. But anyway, being in that school, it really made me realize the importance of standing up for myself because I didn't have anyone to stand up for me. So I would go to, for example, Pride. I would go to the rally for marriage equality, for example. And after high school, in college, I think it was in the summer of college, the head of the Philippine Anti-Discrimination Alliance of Youth Leaders asked me if I wanted to join his team. So basically, we at PANTAY, we're a national network of LGBT and ally advocates fighting for the SOGIE equality bill. So that's how I got involved in fighting for the SOGIE equality bill specifically.
All right. So salamat, no. Thank you for giving some time to join us this morning and also for sharing your stories, no. Siguro mahirap sa laban ng LGBT community ay ang paglaban. It's something that's very personal, no. It's something that demands so much of you to be present, so much of you to be shared with the world, no. And thank you for that. Let's go straight into it. You, di sa PANTAY, no, are pushing for the SOGIE equality bill. Yep. What is the bill promising?
Well, the SOGIE equality bill, it's important. One thing that's important to understand is that it's an equality bill because most people, particularly anti-LGBT advocates, say just the SOGIE bill. What's important to note there is that it is not a bill that grants special rights to LGBT people. It is a bill that prevents discrimination against all people on the basis of their sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. This exists in several different areas, such as in, for example, medical services, in the educational sector, and in terms of the kind of speech, for example, that people partake in.
Okay.
Oh, and I was just gonna say, this is especially important for the youth today. A large portion of the bill cover sectors that the youth are merging into. People our age, for example, education, the workforce. These are institutional bodies that the youth of today are really entering into for the first time. So we need to protect the members of our community who are entering these institutions.
A lot of the siguro questions or frustrations floated by different groups who are in opposition to the bill are asking, no, na parang bakit pa kailangan ng isang SOGIE equality bill when there are other laws that supposedly are preventing discrimination in the workplace, discrimination in educational institutions, discrimination in public spaces, etc. So bakit to kailangan nyo? Ano yung for you guys, no, and for your organization, what necessitated the SOGIE equality bill?
I think it's because the fact that discrimination still exists. Even if there are laws that supposedly prevent harassment, for example, they don't prevent harassment on the basis of SOGIE. And since it's a very delicate issue right now, where you have religious leaders involved in the discussion, for example, often a lot of these kinds of forms of harassment don't get what's the word for it? Like aren't really addressed, right? And I just think that a bill that directly addresses discrimination based on SOGIE is important. The same way, for example, that another bill that would be based on discrimination on other factors would also be important to protect specific people of different sectors based on their identities.
Can you guys share siguro sa mga tagapahinig, no? Ano ba yung siguro alam niyong naging karanasan ng mga tao na nasa LGBT community, no? What are the different experiences of discrimination that they might face, no, in an everyday situation?
I have a couple of trans friends, and it's really hard for the trans community because a lot of their struggles, at least for the people that I've met, they really struggle in having their identity validated and recognized by their members of their own family, institutions, their own friends, and that's a lot of a universal struggle that many of the LGBTQ plus community go through. A lot of our struggles or fights, they're fights towards us being recognized and our identities being considered valid in the institutions that we're a part of.
And even in everyday situations, like you have kids getting bullied because they're gay, people getting kicked out of schools because they're gay or they're lesbian, or maybe they were caught with a boyfriend, for example. People getting harassed on the streets, spat on, people trans people being denied entries at clubs, people being denied medical services even. It's from the most benign to the most malignant forms of discrimination you see in society right now. And in some cases, like you see with what happened to Jennifer Laude, with Ashley Ann, there have even been people who have been killed because of their sexual orientations, gender identities, and gender expressions.
And I think it's a poignant thing that you brought up, the trans community. No, I think marami ding nakalimot na the trans community, trans men, trans women really are at, I think, the end of the food chain, kumbaga, no, na parang lahat na lang ng discrimination, everything about them is being policed, right? Name, identity, even their politics are being policed.
For sure. And it's really ironic that you mentioned that, because if we take a look at LGBT history in general, we see that the trans community really played a pivotal role.
Yes.
You look at Stonewall, you look at Marsha P. Johnson, the trans community has always really led the fight for LGBTQ plus rights. So it's tantamount that we give them that space and we honor them in the way that they deserve.
There are a lot of questions, though, as if people talk about the SOGIE bill as if SOGIE is something inherent only to members of the LGBT community, lesbians, gay men, bisexual people, etc. Let's walk through that. No, ano yung? Can you help siguro break down what SOGIE is?
Okay, yeah, sure. So that's not true. SOGIE stands for sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. Every person has a SOGIE. Every person is attracted to or not attracted to certain people of different genders. Every person identifies with a certain gender identity, or maybe even chooses not to identify with a certain gender identity. And everyone has a way by which they express their gender or lack of gender identity, right? So the SOGIE Equality Bill does not only protect LGBT people, it protects everyone from discrimination on the basis of SOGIE. Like, for example, if you were a straight male child who is discriminated by someone who continuously calls him gay or the F word, for example, it would protect him because it's an assault on his sexual orientation and gender expression, because maybe he's a bit feminine and he's being discriminated on that basis. So the SOGIE bill would still protect him as a person, even if he's not part of the LGBT community.
Yeah. There's definitely one misconception. I think Jake pointed out super well that a lot of people forget to realize is that SOGIE talks about very universal qualities. Like, we all have SOGIE. It's just a matter of recognizing that and seeing that, I guess.
When I talk to some people, syempre, labas na to ng trabaho sa SLB, but when I talk to people about SOGIE, the way that sometimes it gets broken down really is in differentiating, no? Ano yung iba't ibang mga layers, no? I think the SOGIE really refers to very layered identification of different people. And feel free to add, this is for, I think for the benefit of those who aren't as familiar. Yung sex po, this is what is given or granted to a child upon birth based on their based on their physical genitals, no?
Yeah.
So this is a categorization that is dependent on the doctor's observation and the parents.
Yes.
Not granted, but assigned.
Assigned. Ayun. Gender, later on, parang sa mga nalilito kung bakit may kaibahan ng sex and gender. Gender is the way a person identifies.
Yeah.
No, so kung yung sex ay kung ano yung sinabi ng doktor na sex mo, gender is what you say you are. Kung ano yung sa tingin mong identidad mo.
Yeah.
Tama? And then we have expression, which is how you present yourself to the world.
Yeah.
So kung ano yung gusto mong suotin, ano yung gusto mong pangalan, mga ano yung gusto mong paggalaw sa mundo. And ito hindi ito nakadepende sa kanilang gender or sex. No? This is something that can extend beyond the limitations and constraints of a label.
For sure.
Is that right? And lastly, sexuality. Dito pumapasok yung kung kanino ka nagkakagusto, di ba? Sa mga kapareho ng gender mo at sa mga nagkaiba. All right.
Yeah.
Why is it so important that we have all those distinctions? No. I think this is something that we're still continuously learning about. Something that even the LGBT community themselves continues to unlearn and learn. Why is it important right now that those things are understood as in their very distinct way?
I think it's because each of them have their own nuances in terms of the way you're treated and the way by which you express yourself. Like, for example, it's important to know whether or not someone identifies as a man because, for example, it's important to know what kind of pronouns they prefer using, for example. It's important to know the gender expression of someone as being different from your gender identity because sometimes you may be, for example, a man who dresses like a woman but still identifies as a man, so you wouldn't want to be like identified as a woman, for example, right? So it's important to understand the different nuances when it comes to each of these different categories. And also because each of the different movements, like gay, like the LGB, for example, have different struggles from people who are transgender, right? So you can't just lump them into one category because the struggles of a gay straight cis, gay straight, a gay cis male are very different from the struggle of a straight trans woman, for example,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
I think also it helps people to have ideas then about their own identity and have very solid and kind of concrete ideas about their own identity. Like for example, when I was trying to figure out growing up that I was gay, it was hard because I didn't know what the word for it was. I knew that I liked boys. I knew that was weird and not normal. But when I was young, I didn't understand that that was a thing. Like there was a word for it. And so when I discovered the word and when I discovered what that meant, it felt like a lot of relief because I was like, okay, parang there's a word. I'm not just this freaky pariah person. Like it's a thing, and I think giving people that space to discover their own things is important. Also,
a lot of the confusion, fears, kumbaga, a lot of the challenges, I think with the movement really comes from this, no, from the distinction of different things, especially when people have been conditioned for so long to look at the world in a very sort of binary way, in a very categorized, very rigid manner. Just off the top of my head, right, by contesting even the biological distinctions of male and female, you're opening up lots of other things to questions. You're opening up moral and ethics to questions. You're opening up the way we create policy to questions. How do you, as part of this movement, help people contend with the fear of literally jumping into a very unknown space to them? No, for the straight community, lots of what we just talked about is a foreign type of distinction because we've never had to have that distinction. Pero para sa inyo, paano nyo tinatawid siguro yung mga takot, yung pagkalito nila about these new ways of seeing with the world that they're situated in?
for sure, I think with a lot of people right now, they're scared to get it wrong, especially for people who aren't members of the community, which is totally valid and I totally understand, especially with, for example, Twitter call-out culture being the thing that it is. But I think the thing that everybody kind of needs to remember is that we're all kind of learning then together. We're all in this process of trying to understand what these binaries mean, what these spectrums mean. And not to say that we're not going to aim to get it right, but we're all on a continuous learning curve together. And I think that's what makes it scary because it seems so intimidating. Parang, oh my God, will someone call me out if I misgender them, for example? And for me, as the effort that you make to commit to learning, you say sorry for the things that you make mistakes for, but if you commit yourself to learning about it, that's already such a value in and of itself.
Yeah, I agree. And also one thing to note is that it's not really that new. The ideas that come, like for example, even being a trans person, for example, isn't a new idea necessarily. Like, there are many cultures around the world that recognize more than two genders. You have the Native American cultures, for example, that recognize two-spirit people and four other genders, if I'm not mistaken. You have even here in the Philippines, you have the babaylan, who, while traditionally were roles that were performed by women, sometimes were taken on by men who acted as and took on the roles of women in those societies. So even in our history, even in our cultures, gender diversity is embedded within humanity in and of itself. It just goes to show that gender isn't really something that's set in stone, and it has been something that has evolved throughout time. Even, for example, in ancient Greece, homosexual relationships were the norm there, compared to now, right? So even just talking about whether or not LGBT and different SOGIEs are normal is something that can be contested.
All right. We'll take a break here, no? I think we've had a lot to talk about and a lot more siguro to unpack and explore later on. Pero sa pagbalik natin, tingnan naman natin yung paggalaw ng bill itself, no? The movement itself, why it's so important for the youth to be part, and also, I think important the contestations and obstacles you guys have encountered in getting the bill passed. But for now, let's take a break, and we'll be back after a few minutes.
Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, radyo, Katipunan. Radyo, radyo, Katipunan.
To open our eyes and ears that we may see the face of Christ and hear his voice in our midst. For 28 years, Jesuit Communications has been promoting the Catholic faith and serving the nation through both traditional and new media. Hear us tackle national issues in light of Christian values on Usapang Kapatid, Pasakalye, and Radio Veritas. Watch our uplifting reflections on Kapet Pandasal and The Word Exposed, as well as our acclaimed TV specials. Listen to the inspiring and soothing music of Jesuit Music Ministry's original artists as you read our spiritually enriching books. To learn more about JustCom's mission of evangelization and education, follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and our website, justcom.ph. To give a face to the faceless and a voice to the voiceless, that we may recognize Christ in them and hear his story in theirs.
Calling on all young male professionals. Do you wish to live an extraordinary life? Are you tired of the routine and mundane and long for a dynamic, adventurous, and even dangerous life? Do you wish to make your life count and hope to make an impact long after you're gone? Do you wish to live a life of service to society, to country, and to dear Mother Earth? Then you are the one we are looking for. Consider the Society of Jesus. Join the Church's gallant army and turn your world upside down. Call the Jesuits Vocations Promotions Team, 426-6101, local 3406. Once again, 426-6101, local 3406.
Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ear.
Do you long for a good spiritual read? Or for literature that not only feeds the mind, but nourishes the soul as well? Do you want to be inspired, feel positive and hopeful about life? Then read The Windhover, the official magazine of the Jesuits in the Philippines. Written by Jesuits and their lay partners, The Windhover features real stories about the Jesuits and their various ministries. Be inspired. Be blessed. Subscribe to The Windhover. For inquiries, call the Philippine Jesuit Aid Association at telephone numbers 426-6001, locals 4890 or 4892. Once again, Philippine Jesuit Aid Association, telephone numbers 426-6001, locals 4890 or 4892. Calling on all Ateneans, students, and alumni. Join the Ateneo community every first and third Sundays of the month as we celebrate the Holy Eucharist at the Church of the Jesu. Bring your family and enjoy the insightful homilies of our beloved Jesuit priests, as well as the heavenly singing of our homegrown choirs. Make your Sunday a truly solemn day with the Lord. Come to the Jesu Masses, 10:30 in the morning, first and third Sundays of the month.
Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, radyo, Katipunan. Radyo, radyo, Katipunan.
All right, good morning. Welcome back to the Kuwentuhang Bayan with the Simbahang Lingkod ng Bayan, the social-political apostolate of the Society of Jesus in the Philippines. Ayan, yung pinag-uusapan po natin sa araw na ito, isang napaka-controversial na issue, napaka-init na issue. We are talking about the SOGIE Equality Bill, and we have here two students, Jake and Digo. Students dito sa Ateneo de Manila. Students who have been giving their time and energy and effort to PANTAY Pilipinas, tama? Which is a national network of different advocates lobbying for the passage of the SOGIE Equality Bill. For the first part of the show, yung kanina, na pwede nyong balikan mamaya, napag-usapan talaga ay bakit naging mahalaga yung SOGIE Bill. Bakit mahalaga ang SOGIE Bill? Bakit, ano ba yung tinutugunan ng isang SOGIE Equality Bill, especially regarding yung experiences ng ating mga kapatid na nasa LGBT plus community. And we also try to talk about some of the questions, some of the fears that emerged from talking about this idea of sexual orientation, gender, etc. Those different distinctions of identity. Again, if you have questions, if you have comments, please feel free to leave them in the comment box or send a message to the Simbahang Lingkod ng Bayan. Sa organisasyon namin, patuloy kaming naniniwala na posible pa ang isang mas mabuting lipunan at kailangan mapag-usapan at kausapin ang iba't ibang mga sektor na kasama dito. Okay. Earlier we talked about the movement. Now I want to talk about the bill. I want to talk about what you guys are doing for lobbying. Can you share with us, share with the listeners kung asan na ba yung bill sa proseso ng legislative arm, and what are the next, siguro, ano yung mga next na mangyayari sa bill in terms of its passage?
If I'm not mistaken, very recent. I think it was yesterday and the day before yesterday, there was a Senate hearing.
A couple days ago,
there was a Senate hearing on the SOGIE Equality Bill.
Okay.
Yeah. So currently, originally we thought that we were going to have to go through the entire process of going through Congress, but apparently the bills that went past the third reading were able to go through to Senate. So currently we're in the stage where we're having the first readings in Senate.
How did the reading go? Do you guys have any siguro ano yung pulso nyo with how the reading went, especially in terms of the different legislators who were present and who lobbied for or against? I also know there were a lot of parang key speakers from different sectors.
Actually, masaya nga. Well, personally, I wasn't able to go to the hearing because I had class. Sad. But
ayun, nagparinig po sa admin na payagan po sila mag-lobby.
Okay lang. Pero it was really super heartwarming to see the speakers from the other sectors really support the SOGIE Equality Bill. For example, the sister from, I believe, Saints Call.
Yes,
for me, that was super heartwarming to see, especially somebody from the Catholic community really showed their support for the SOGIE Equality Bill. It really does mean a lot from that front.
But there were also very powerful people who were speaking against it, right? How do you guys feel about those points raised? Some more questionable than others, pero how do you feel about the different points raised against the passage of the bill?
Well, the main point that's being raised is that it grants special rights to LGBT people, and it's an impingement, am I using the right word?
Yes.
On free speech and religious freedom.
Okay.
But one thing that we have to understand is this is a bill that ensures equality because there is an existing inequality in society right now. We can't just pretend just because Vice Ganda's on TV that there is equality between people of cis, straight SOGIes and people of other SOGIes, right? The LGBT community is still continuously being discriminated every single day and in different ways. So the SOGIE Equality Bill exists to correct for that discrimination and to ensure that we have equality in our society. Also, it's not an impingement on free speech or on religious freedom because religious freedom only says that you have the right to believe in what you believe in, but it does not extend toward discrimination. Discrimination in any form is not a human right.
So those are the two common points, that it grants special rights. Pero siguro magandang pag-isipan para sa ating mga tagapakinig, kung special right nga ba ang makapag-apply sa trabaho na hindi ka tatanggalin dahil lang ikaw ay bakla, ikaw ay lesbiana, etc. Special right nga ba ang makapasok ka sa isang gusali at institusyon na walang haharang sa'yo dahil lang sa suot mo, Those are things for us to think about today. And also very good point on religious freedom, If I'm not mistaken, those rights really point to individual rights and not protection over institutions, if I'm not mistaken. how did the movement grow? You mentioned kanina it's a national network. You mentioned that you were pulled in because you knew the main convener. But how did this movement get started? How did it build up to where it is now today?
Well, the Philippine LGBTQ plus movement, you can start it all the way back in the
1994.
1994 with Father Mickey, who organized the first Pride
Right,
March.
yes.
But if you're talking about the SOGIE bill mismo, you can trace it all the way back to 2000, where it was initially the first kind of drafts of the SOGIE bill were filed initially by the late Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago. And in almost every Congress since then, there have been similar lobbying practices to fight for SOGIE. In fact, the SOGIE Quality Bill is, if I'm not mistaken, the longest running bill under Philippine Senate history, because it's been running for about 3 years now because of interpolation. So that only shows that we still have so much more to do, even if the fight itself has been so long.
Yeah, and even back then, it wasn't the SOGIE Quality Bill; it was the Anti-Discrimination Bill. Yeah, and that changed over time as we realized that, well, SOGIE Equality just sounds nicer.
And I think kailangan din naman yung articulation.
Yeah. That it's not just about preventing discrimination, but about ensuring equality. And in terms of the movement, there are many forces, not just PANTAY, that's working toward the SOGIE Equality Bill. You have groups like Lagablab, which is a national network of LGBT organizations, groups like Babaylan, groups like the Babaylanes, groups like TLF Share, and different allies that help in the fight for the SOGIE Equality Bill. Even more recently, we had the issue with Gretchen Diaz, which sparked a lot of debate, and in fact brought the whole discussion on the SOGIE Quality Bill to a national level now.
How did siguro no I'm looking back at my experiences in different coalitions, different networks, and it's rare to see young people involved. No, it's rare to see young people involved in different movements. Usually pare-pareho yung mga tao, but here we see that sa kilusan ninyo ang daming bata. I talk about batas if I'm not part of that. Pero ang daming younger people, right? Like there's a healthy amount of younger people who are part of this particular advocacy. Why do you think younger people are inclined to advocate for this? And siguro ano yung kahalagahan, no, na may espasyo yung kabataan dito sa kilusan na to?
I think it's because the youth are primarily affected by discrimination against LGBT people and people of different SOGIEs. Like ever since I was a kid, I've experienced being bullied for being bisexual. I've experienced people calling me gay behind my back. I've experienced people who have lost friends because of their SOGIEs. So I think that the idea of SOGIE is a universal thing that crosses all ages, all sectors of society, and I think that's why the youth is involved, because the experience of SOGIE is something that is so universal and something that primarily affects them.
No, for sure. The youth are major stakeholders for the fight for the SOGIE Equality Bill. Like I said kanina, parang if you look at what the SOGIE Equality Bill protects you against from discrimination, education, workforce, applying for healthcare, these are things that the youth have a major stake in, especially as they're entering into different parts of their life as they grow up into adolescence. So we need the youth now more than ever to really push and lobby for this bill alongside of us.
All right. You guys, I think, are students here in Ateneo. No? It's a Catholic university with very particular values. No, when we look outside, a lot of the more conservative faith-based groups really rallied in opposition. No? They mobilized people outside of the Senate. There were many representatives of different conservative denominations inside during the first hearing. How do you, I guess this is a more personal question, no? How do you guys reconcile that being situated within a university with specific values
for sure,
and pushing for this bill, no? Which may or may not go against some tenets of the faith?
Of course. Actually, for personally, I'm very grateful to be in Ateneo. I was one of the...
Para po hindi siya ma-kick out, no?
I was one of the... For One Big Pride last March, I was one of the project heads. And so we worked very closely with admin in terms of putting up the event, and they were very helpful. I was actually quite surprised how accommodating and how helpful they were with helping us put up the Ateneo Pride March.
In fact, LSVP spoke at
Yes, she
Pride,
did
yeah.
speak at One Big Pride. So with that, we see that in a lot of ways, Ignatian values, they're really rooted in things like compassion. You look at values like core personalis, for example. You look at values like faith that does justice. These are values that not only care about the state of an individual, but also the state of oppressed communities at large. And so if you really think about it, Ateneo education, just information, these are things that really support things like the SOGIE equality, well, actually.
Oh. And I think magaling binanggit mo mga values, no, faith that does justice, especially for a church, no, wherein our faith invites us towards preferring working with the poor. And
Yeah.
I think the LGBT community, for people have forgotten, is still a marginalized sector.
Very
no?
much so.
Pero mahirap din gumalaw within that sector because I have seen and heard of, and I know personally, people who identify as gay, identify as bi, lesbian, etc. Pero are against the bill. How do you navigate siguro that tension? For me, there are a lot of layers, no. Pero kayo siguro, how do you try and understand where they're coming from? How do you try and engage with that?
You know, fighting for the SOGIE Equality Bill has been one of the hardest things I've had to do. Not just because there are a lot of religious people online that are going to go against what you're fighting for, but there are a lot of people in your own community that will tell you that what you're fighting for is wrong. Even Jake Zyrus went out and said, and like he was referring to the whole
Yes.
bathroom situation, where he said that we have to accommodate the beliefs of others in what we fight for. But since the bathroom situation is so tied to SOGIE equality, it's pretty much tantamount to going against SOGIE equality, especially with the current political climate. And I just think that a lot of people right now have this misconception that people are being accepted right now, that the LGBT community is safe, but we're not. For many people who are safe, many people are safe, and for those people, I think it's great. I think it's great you have a loving community that cares about you and you have opportunities that cater to you. But for many people and many LGBT people around the Philippines, we still experience discrimination even to this day.
I think one thing really important to remember is that if you do not experience discrimination, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Just because you're in a place when you're not experiencing discrimination, which, as Jake said, great that you aren't experiencing that form or any form of discrimination even. That doesn't mean we don't have brothers and sisters out there in Visayas or in Mindanao who aren't experiencing these forms of discrimination. So it's our duty to fight for them also.
I think when you talk about people who are part of the community who are able to avoid able to avoid the majority of the discrimination, it seems to be pointing towards a very particular class, a very particular class of people, and those with less, whether the less economically, less socially, really are at the butt end of the discrimination part. How do you try to navigate the distinction between class within this advocacy, right? Large criticism of LGBT movements is always that it is a movement that is situated within the middle class and upper middle class communities.
Yeah, for sure.
How do you siguro try to engage with that difficult tension? Because that is where people have the liberty to explore and lobby, right? So paano nyo yung tinatawid?
Well, I really believe that issues in and of themselves are very intersectional. Parang it's hard to talk about LGBTQ plus issues in a vacuum alone because there are LGBTQ plus people in the urban poor.
Yes.
There are LGBTQ plus lumad people. So these issues are very intersectional, and I think we're making progress, but I think a definite thing that the LGBTQ plus movement has to do as a movement is not forget that there are people outside of, like you said, that upper middle class section that still need our help, that still need people to listen to, specifically, especially within the urban poor community.
And in fact, that's what we've been doing at PANTAY. We've been going to lower income communities and having talks and community dialogues about SOGIE because we want to inform people and get their perspectives on SOGIE as well.
Parang we have to move all together as a community. If we leave one sector, even one person behind, we're not moving forward together as a community at large.
Konektado dun, no? there recently online, certain groups really pushed na parang, why do people talk about the trans community's issues and why is no one talking about our farmers, right? You're pitting marginalized sectors against each other.
Yes.
And I think that there is that siguro underpinning assumption of a hierarchy of issues, no? In a time where thousands of people have been shot dead because they are supposedly drug pushers, in a time where China is taking the sea from our fisher folk, in a time when there's rampant mining in different areas in Mindanao displacing IPs.
Yes.
Bakit ngayon, no? Bakit ngayon isinusulong tong bill na to? How do you guys understand it? I mean, I have my own understanding of it, pero I want to hear from you too, no? Paano niyo yun iniintindi? Paano niyo yun siguro tinutugunan?
I would just want to say flat out that those people are liars. Because if they really cared about farmers, if they really cared about the West Philippine Sea, if they really cared about the thousands of people dying because of extrajudicial killings, they would have spoken up about it. And there'd be a lot more discourse around going on about it. Not that those are not important issues. I so agree they are. And personally, those are other of my own advocacies. But just because there are other suffering marginalized sectors does not mean you have to bring down another. You help each other up, not bring each other down.
I think actually very tama yung sinabi mo kanina na parang it seems like there's a hierarchy of, for example, marginalized communities or oppressed communities, when really it's more lateral than that, no? Parang we're all oppressed by very similar structures. We experience some similar issues, and pitting these communities against each other won't really advance the fight for equality for any marginalized community. Actually, it attacks more from the rhetoric and from the discourse that we could possibly have because of it.
Oo. Ang daming mga tanong na lumalabas, lalo na't nagiging national issue yung SOGIE bill, no? And I think what's emerging is that there is a lot of I think you guys have been using this word kanina pa, misconceptions about people, no? Just this morning, right, I was overhearing two guys nearby, and they were talking about the trans issue using bathrooms and how people can pretend to be a woman and go in the bathroom and assault people. Or there are others naman na kung pinaglalaban yung transgender, therefore we can extend that to trans age, trans nation. With those types of questions, misunderstanding, misconceptions emerging, the task on you guys really is how do you convert people, right? How do you get people on board? How do you challenge the way people are seeing things and help them accommodate new ways of seeing things? How do you go about that?
So let's go through those one by one.
Sige.
So the first one you said was what again?
Yung cross-dressers, going inside bathrooms to assault.
I think those are often very isolated incidences where you have people who are not trans that pretend they are trans just to assault children. And in those instances, it's not the trans people who are the problem. It's cis straight people who are the problem, who go to bathrooms to assault women. So it's not the trans community you should be blaming there. And also, if you really think about it, these people aren't going there to assault children. They're going there to go to the bathroom, right? So in the vast majority of instances, there is very little risk. And also, if you're going to talk about the risk of sexual assault, then there are a lot of other groups that you should be banning from going into different places, like ex-convicts from going into bathrooms, but we still allow them to because we recognize that there is a trust that goes on when you are in a public space.
Yeah, the issue of sexual harassment, especially regarding the trans issue for CRs, it's an issue of sexual harassment.
Yeah.
It's not an issue regarding the trans community. It's an issue that of culture that perpetuates sexual harassment. If you allow trans people into restrooms, you're not increasing that percentage of it happening at all.
But that conflation within the two issues, emerges from a very particular way of understanding power and gender, no?
Yes.
And for my understanding, that's a lot of things to unlearn, no? Pinanganak ka pa lang, ang dami ng imposition ng mundo sa'yo that you're forced to accommodate. And to unlearn that now, especially when you're talking to people who don't have the academic resources we do, don't have the social and political spaces for us to to communally unlearn
Yes.
these things, na mahirap yung ganong klaseng internal na paggalaw, no? So how can we help? How can we encourage people to siguro unpack yung mga sinasabi nila?
No, for sure. I think one thing actually we need to for the LGBTQ community, parang what we need to do to move forward in this day and age is we need to be able to listen. I understand that it's very easy to want to shut out people who have differing views from you from the views that you hold on both ends of the argument. I agree that that's a very easy thing to do, and it feels good. But for me personally, I don't think that the discourse will ever advance that way. We need to be able to listen to each other regardless of how differing our opinions are, and not necessarily meet in the middle, but be willing to open our ears, because that's how we're transformed by things, or that's how we open ourselves up for the ability to be transformed. We really have to open up this dialogue, this discourse, to ensure that to happen.
Yeah, and also I think it's because generally there's a culture of ignorance when it comes to a lot of issues revolving gender, and I think that attributes mostly to the fact that the Philippines is a very conservative environment. Ever since the Spanish came, right? That's how we've been, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but a problem that's come with that is the lack of discussion when it comes to issues relating to gender. So the approach that we take is that we try to educate people on different issues, so that maybe they can become normal and they become something that people can actually talk about. Because when you don't talk about LGBT people, they become this idea in your head to which you can attach you can attach other stereotypes to, right? They become exotic. They become these creatures that sexually harass people, that are predators, for example. But when you break that veil of ignorance and you look at who these people really are and what their identities really are, that's when we really strive toward a culture of equality.
In addition to that, no, parang I'm sure every straight person knows an LGBTQ plus person, whether they know it or not. Parang it could be a cousin, a distant relative, a friend, somebody you just see passing across the street. There are LGBTQ plus people in your lives, regardless of wherever you are. And in seeing that, you see that at the end of the day, we're really just people. Parang we all have different values, of course, but we all have a commonality in our humanity. And I think that's what a lot of people forget, no? Na parang at the end of the day, we're all just people.
Sige, ang dami kong pang gustong pag-usapan, pero we're nearing the end of the show. I want to ask you guys, how can people help in terms of the bill? Siguro, doon na lang muna tayo. How can people help in terms of the passage of the bill?
Well, for one thing, educate people on SOGIE. For another, join PANTAY.
Ayan, recruitment po pala.
You can join PANTAY at bit.ly/pantay tayo.
Ayan, may recruitment. And for those who don't want to be part of, let's say, traditional political spaces, paano pwedeng tumulong?
Join PANTAY pa rin. Charot.
No, I think it's really important to, one, expose yourself, learn about these things, learn about SOGIE, learn about why it's important, learn about the issues that our community is facing, and then two, really live that learning out in your day-to-day life. If you hear people talking about things that perhaps they're misinformed about, perhaps they're not talking about maybe correctly or in the most intelligent way or in the right way, you let them know given what you've learned.
Yeah.
Of course, obviously in a respectful, as polite as possible way. But we need to be able to talk about this also on the grassroots level, din eh.
And also, contact your congressman, contact your senators, and tell them to vote for the SOGIE Equality Bill.
Yes.
Ayan. Let's imagine that it did get passed. No, wishful thinking that it does get passed with this selection of our senators. What will change? Siguro it's a two-pronged question. No? What will change once it does get passed? And pangalawa, what will ensure that its passage will be enforced, that its passage will be something na mararamdaman whether you are a rich gay man in BGC or a poor trans woman out in a rural area?
Well, actually, a lot of this is addressed in sections 10 through 13 of the SOGIE Equality Bill. Section 10 talks about the government policies that would be enacted. For example, there would be social protection programs where the national government shall ensure that communities vulnerable to stigma and discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression are integrated into government-run social protection programs. There will also be diversity programs and training. There will also be a SOGIE Equality Oversight Committee, which oversees whether or not the bill is being enforced. And there will also be other departments such as DOJ, CSC, PNP, and DND, NYC, PCW, DOLE, DepEd, and other departments that will be involved in ensuring that the provisions of the bill are going to be enforced.
All right. Last question before we end the show. In a time wherein around the world it's politically turbulent, so many issues happening, so many things happening. What is paano ba to? Ano yung halaga ng pagsulong ng paglaban ng LGBT community? What is the value of carving out spaces, of securing victories as an LGBT community?
Well, I've always believed that if you're gonna fight hate, you have to do it with love. And I think the core of the LGBT community is love.
Yes.
It's loving people. It's allowing yourself to love people who are gay, allowing yourself to love people who are trans, and loving everyone regardless of who they are, and treating them as equals. Because at the end of the day, who you love, what you love, or who you are doesn't matter. What's important is what you do, and what's important is how you treat people.
No, for sure. I totally agree with what Jake said, na parang at the real tenet of our community is really love, no? In fact, it's such a beautiful thing to witness, especially if you go to events like Pride March, for example. Pride March is an example of an event that's just overflowing with love for the community, for each other. And if there's anything that I guess I want to leave a lot of people with, it's that. And especially in a time na, like you said, it's very politically turbulent. It can seem very bleak. I think the fight for the SOGIE Equality Bill, or the fight for the LGBTQ plus community in general, is a fight that shows that it then sounds cheesy, but love wins. And love will win. Love will win in the end.
Okay. Ako naman, para din sa mga nakikinig. Wow, nag-participate. I said this, and we had a show here last time with Camp Queer about the history of the LGBT movement. No? This is during Pride Month. And yung isang nabanggit dun na our existence, no, as queer people, as LGBT people, is evidence that there are new ways of seeing the world that are possible, and better ways of seeing the world that are possible. So sa mga nakinig, no, kung interesado kayong tumulong sa Pantay Pilipinas, sinabi na ni Jake ang kanilang recruitment website. Can you repeat it one more time?
bit.ly/pantay tayo.
Ayan. And if you have questions, if you have concerns, you can reach out to the Simbahang Lingkod ng Bayan through our Facebook page, or to myself, again, through SLB. And kung kaya nyong tumawag, tama, sa kanilang mga legislators, whether that's your representative, whether that's a senator you voted for or didn't vote for but is in the office, please do so. No, that will be much appreciated. Do you guys have any projects, no, beyond Pantay naman, that you want to invite people to or tell people about?
Right now, because I'm part of the Commission on Gender Equality of the Sanggunian.
Okay.
Right now we're planning, we're in the process of planning, but keep out. One Big Pride is gonna happen again this year. We're looking at it sometime maybe around February also. So
Okay.
please keep an eye out. In addition, we're in talks to start a possible LGBTQ plus sector also on campus. So keep an eye out then for that.
All right. So maraming exciting things for the Ateneo community over the coming school year, no. So muli, maraming salamat sa pagsama, maraming salamat sa pagbahagi ng mga kwento. Ito ulit yung Simbahang Lingkod ng Bayan na patuloy na naniniwala na posible ang mas mabuting lipunan at pwede itong simulan sa isang kwentuhan. We'll see you next Friday.
us remember that we are always in the holy presence of God.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
The angel of the Lord declared unto Mary,
And she conceived of the Holy Spirit.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you. Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Behold the handmaid of the Lord.
Be it done unto me according to your word.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you. Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
And the Word was made flesh.
And dwelt among us.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you. Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Pray for us, O Holy Mother of God.
That we may be made worthy of the promises of Christ.
Let us pray.
Pour forth, we beseech you, O Lord, your grace into our hearts, that we to whom the incarnation of Christ your Son was made known by the message of an angel, may by his passion and cross be brought to the glory of his resurrection, through the same Christ our Lord. Amen.
Glory to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit.
As it was in the beginning, is now, and will be forever. Amen.
May we always rejoice in the Lord, who became one like us in all things but sin, and in the loving protection of Mary, through whom we have received the author of life.
Amen.
May the blessing of Almighty God, the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit come upon us and remain with us forever.
Amen.